Fallen flags littering the ground around gravesites of veterans. It's a site that caught the attention of people in Blanco who say these sacred sites deserve better, so they took action. Eyewitness News reporter Erica Zucco joins us in studio now to explain what happened. Erica?
Well, Jeff, it's volunteers keeping up the Blanco Historical Cemetery. They place flags to honor people who have sacrificed everything for our freedom. But that act of respect comes with challenges. So an aspiring Eagle Scout and community members stepped up to find a solution that could spread to memorials beyond Blanco. Each flag marks a choice to give respect to those who gave all. But the blow of wind that reveals a flag's beauty can also lead to this.
The flag is super dirty.
Nathan Burden knows what the veterans buried here stood for.
My whole family, throughout my grandpa, my great-grandpa, they've all served.
And he wants to make sure each tribute keeps the honor it deserves. Carved in the heart of Blanco, the scenery brings this site much of its beauty. But the soft dirt also presents a problem, clogging copper holders volunteers used to help the flags stand. And they tried other bases, but the garden tools would snap them apart. No strong foundation for the flags would lead to this.
It's kind of heartbreaking when you look around the cemetery and you see flags lying on the ground.
So supporters of the cemetery teamed up with a scout searching for a service project, launching a plan to produce hundreds of these.
This main part is rebar with a metal conduit that the flag holder is in. And then it has two washers.
Simple, but with a deeper meaning.
It's going to help us an awful lot. People always want to honor their veterans. You know, it's just what America is.
They'll color code each one based on when veterans served, so volunteers know which type of flag to put in.
Hopefully this will stay in a while.
To make sure this act of gratitude stands tall. And local steel producer Patriot Erectors stepped up to donate materials and cut the rebar. And Burden is organizing volunteers to put the holders in place. He says he'll be presenting the idea to Fort Sam Houston National Cemetery as well and hopes it will catch on in other places. Back to you.
A great idea, Erica. Thank you.